58 million Americans now live with arthritis, and doctors are seeing joint damage in patients barely out of their 20s. But the generation that grew up in the 1950s never took a glucosamine supplement, never heard the phrase joint health, and never stepped inside a gym. Yet they kept their knees, hips, and shoulders working into their 80s. So what were they doing that we stopped doing? These are 15 forgotten 1950s habits that quietly protected joints for decades, and not one of them required a gym membership. Number 15. Walking everywhere. In the 1950s, the average American family owned one car, if they owned one at all. That meant walking to the grocery store, walking to church, walking children to school, and walking to visit neighbors down the street. None of it felt like exercise. It was how you got around. A 1950s mother might cover 2 or 3 miles before lunch without ever lacing up a special pair of shoes. But orthopedic research now confirms that regular low-impact walking is one of the best things a person can do for their joints. Every step pumps synovial fluid through the cartilage, delivering nutrients and flushing waste products. Cartilage doesn't have its own blood supply. Without movement, it slowly starves. The generation that walked 2 or 3 miles a day without thinking twice was feeding their cartilage every morning before breakfast. But walking wasn't the only daily chore doing the work. Number 14. Hanging laundry on the clothesline. Before automatic dryers became standard in American homes, wet laundry went outside on the line. Shirts, sheets, trousers, towels, all pinned overhead, one piece at a time. A full load could mean 40 or 50 individual reaches above the head, arms extended, shoulders rotating through their full range. That repetitive overhead motion mimicked exactly what physical therapists now prescribe for shoulder mobility. A clinical trial at Bay Path University actually used clothesline hanging as an occupational therapy intervention for older adults with shoulder osteoarthritis, and it worked comparably to traditional therapeutic exercise. Grandmothers in the 1950s were doing physical therapy 3 times a week and didn't even know it. They weren't thinking about range of motion. They were thinking about whether the sheets would dry before supper, and what they were eating at supper might have mattered even more. Number 13. Eating gelatin salads and bone broth. The 1950s were the golden age of gelatin in America. Molded salads, aspics, and fruits suspended in colorful gelatin sat on nearly every dinner table. It wasn't considered health food. It was considered normal. Jell-O alone was found in roughly 72% of American households during its peak years. Meanwhile, homemade soup almost always started with bones simmered for hours on the back burner, releasing collagen, minerals, and amino acids into the broth. Nobody was thinking about collagen peptides or amino acid profiles. But gelatin is collagen, broken down by heat into a form the body can absorb. It contains glycine and proline, 2 amino acids that play direct roles in cartilage maintenance and repair. What looked like a strange lime green side dish was quietly delivering the same building blocks that modern supplement companies now sell for $30 a bottle. Here's what's interesting about the next one, because it's a habit nobody would recognize as exercise. Number 12. Gardening every single day. Backyard gardening in the 1950s wasn't a weekend hobby. It was part of the household economy. Families tended vegetable patches from spring through fall, and the work demanded a full catalog of joint movements. Squatting to pull weeds, kneeling to plant seeds, reaching overhead to tie tomato vines, then digging, raking, and hauling compost across the yard. Every major joint in the body got loaded, stretched, and mobilized through its complete range of motion, spread across gentle sessions rather than concentrated into one punishing weekend workout. The squat alone is now considered one of the most fundamental human movements for preserving hip and knee function into old age. Gardeners didn't know that. They were growing tomatoes. But the movement didn't stop when the garden gate closed. Number 11. Dancing every week. The 1950s were a golden era for social dancing. Couples went to dance halls on Saturday nights. Teenagers hosted dance parties in their living rooms. Swing, foxtrot, and jitterbug weren't niche skills. They were common knowledge. And from an orthopedic perspective, dancing is extraordinary for joints. It demands lateral movement, rotational weight shifts, quick direction changes, and sustained balance on one leg. Those are patterns that maintain the connective tissue around hips and knees in ways that straight-line walking can't replicate. The dance floor was a joint preservation clinic disguised as a good time. This next habit involved something far less glamorous, but the effect on the hands and wrists was worth paying attention to. Number 10. Wringing laundry by hand. Before the spin cycle existed, wet clothing had to be wrung out by hand or fed through a manual wringer attached to the wash tub. Either way, it required serious grip strength, the kind that left your forearms aching by the end of wash day. And grip strength isn't about hands alone. It correlates strongly with overall musculoskeletal health and is now used in medical clinics as a predictor of longevity in aging populations. Strong grip means strong tendons, strong forearms, and stable wrist joints. Modern life has quietly stripped away almost every daily grip challenge, from twist-off caps to push-button appliances to electric can openers. The 1950s housewife wringing out a heavy, wet bedsheet was building the kind of functional hand and wrist strength that rheumatologists now wish their patients still had. But the connection between daily habits and joint longevity goes even deeper than movement. The next habit on this list has to do with something most people never think about when they think about joint health. Number 9. Carrying less body weight. This one isn't a habit so much as a consequence of all the other habits combined. In the mid-1950s, the adult obesity rate in America was approximately 9%. Today, depending on which study you look at, it exceeds 40%. That gap didn't happen overnight, and neither did its effect on joints. The math on joint loading is brutal. Biomechanical research shows that every excess pound of body weight adds roughly 4 pounds of compressive force on the knee with each step. So what does that mean in practice? A person carrying 30 extra pounds is putting an additional 120 pounds of pressure on their knee joints, thousands of times a day, year after year. The generation that ate 3 meals a day, walked to the store, and never heard of a drive-through carried less weight on their frames. Their joints didn't have to work nearly as hard to get through a normal afternoon. Now, the habits we haven't covered yet might surprise you because they don't look like exercise at all. Number 8. Sweeping and mopping floors by hand. Vacuum cleaners existed in the 50s, but they were heavy, clunky, and far less common than they are today. Many households still relied on brooms and mops for daily cleaning. The sweeping motion engages the shoulders, core, and wrists in a gentle rotational pattern, the same type of movement that spine specialists now recommend for maintaining spinal mobility. It wasn't intense, it wasn't dramatic, but it happened every day, sometimes twice, and that consistency mattered far more than intensity ever could. A body that rotates gently through a sweeping motion 6 days a week doesn't lose its spinal range of motion the way a body planted in an office chair for 8 hours does. But this next habit is the one that catches people off guard because almost nobody thinks of it as physical activity. Number 7. Getting up and down from the floor. 1950s families spent significant time on the floor. Mothers played with small children on living room carpets. Fathers knelt beside model train sets. Families gathered around board games spread out at coffee table height. But when is the last time you sat on the floor and stood back up without bracing yourself on something? That simple act is one of the most revealing tests of functional fitness. Researchers in Brazil developed a sitting rising test that correlates floor to standing ability with mortality risk. Joints that regularly move through deep flexion and extension maintain their range. Joints that only operate between chair height and standing height slowly lose it. The 1950s living room floor was an accidental mobility lab that nobody recognized until it was gone. If you have been finding this interesting, take a second to subscribe. This channel covers forgotten health wisdom and practical history every week. Number 6. Carrying groceries home on foot. Before the minivan and the bulk warehouse store, grocery shopping meant walking to a nearby market 2 or 3 times a week, selecting what you could carry and walking it home in paper bags. There were no plastic handles, no rolling carts to the parking lot, and no trunk to load everything into. That loaded walk, bags in both hands, body working to stabilize against shifting weight with every step, is what trainers now call a farmer's carry. It builds grip, shoulder stability, hip alignment, and ankle proprioception all at once. Nobody in 1953 was calling it functional training. They were getting the eggs home without cracking them, but the effect on their joints was the same as what a personal trainer would charge $75 an hour to prescribe. But the kitchen might have been the most important room of all, because that's where some of the most consistent joint protection happened without anyone noticing. Number 5. Cooking from scratch every day. The average 1950s homemaker spent 4 to 5 hours a day preparing meals. There were no microwave ovens, no pre-chopped vegetables, and very few frozen dinners on the market. Cooking meant standing at a kitchen counter, chopping vegetables with a heavy knife, rolling pie dough by hand, stirring pots on the stove, and kneading bread until the dough felt right. Each task engaged different joints through different patterns of motion, all at low intensity and sustained over long periods. The ankles and knees benefited from the standing, the wrists and fingers benefited from the gripping and cutting, and the shoulders benefited from the constant reaching across counter space and into overhead cupboards. It was a full-body, low-grade workout that didn't feel like anything more than getting Tuesday dinner on the table. And speaking of moving through the house, there's another habit hiding in the architecture itself. Number 4. Climbing stairs throughout the day. The typical 1950s home had 2 stories with bedrooms upstairs and living areas down. Families moved between floors constantly, 10, 15, even 20 trips a day between laundry, bed making, and putting children to sleep. But here's what made that habit different from a modern stair workout. Stair climbing is now recognized as one of the best exercises for maintaining knee and hip joint stability. Each step requires the quadriceps and glutes to control the joint through a significant range of motion under load. The family that climbed stairs all day didn't need a leg press machine. The staircase was the machine. And unlike a gym session that lasts 45 minutes, these stair trips were spread across the entire day, giving the joints repeated low-dose stimulus with full recovery in between. What comes next might be the most underrated habit on this entire list. Number 3. Taking cod liver oil. For decades, cod liver oil was a staple of the American medicine cabinet. Mothers gave it to children by the spoonful, and many adults took it daily well into old age. The taste was terrible and nobody enjoyed it. But why did they keep taking it? Because their own mothers had insisted on it, and because the results spoke for themselves, even if the science hadn't caught up yet. Cod liver oil is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which reduce the inflammatory markers associated with joint degradation, and in vitamin D, which supports the calcium absorption necessary for maintaining bone density around joints. Modern research has confirmed what 1950s mothers suspected on instinct. That awful spoonful of cod liver oil was doing real work inside the body. They couldn't explain the mechanism, and they didn't need to. But this next habit is one that no modern gym would ever think to recreate. Number 2, beating and hanging heavy rugs. Spring cleaning. In the 1950s meant hauling area rugs outside, draping them over a fence or clothesline, and beating the dust out with a wooden paddle or wire beater. It was exhausting work that could take the better part of a morning, combining overhead lifting, sustained grip, rotational striking, and core bracing into a single unforgiving task. No gym exercise replicates all of those joint demands at once. But there's something else going on here that's easy to miss. Because it happened seasonally, rug beating served as a kind of natural stress test for the shoulders, wrists, and spine, a check-in that kept those joints accustomed to heavy, awkward loads. People who beat rugs every spring kept their upper bodies prepared for the unexpected in ways that a person who hasn't lifted anything heavier than a laptop simply can't match. It wasn't pleasant work, but the joints remembered it. And that brings us to the final habit on this list, the one that happened while the body was doing nothing at all. Number 1, going to bed early and sleeping consistently. The 1950s household ran on a schedule that barely varied from one week to the next. Dinner at 6, evening radio or television until 8:30 or 9, lights out by 10, up again at 6. There were no streaming services to keep you watching until midnight, no smartphones glowing on the nightstand at 2 in the morning. That consistent early sleep pattern did something that no supplement or exercise could replicate. During the deep stages of sleep, the body releases growth hormone, which triggers repair in cartilage, tendons, and connective tissue. Chronic sleep deprivation elevates inflammatory cytokines, the same molecules that accelerate joint breakdown. The generation that went to bed when the television signed off was giving their joints 7 to 8 uninterrupted hours of repair time every night for decades. Could any pill or powder do what that kind of consistency does? Not a chance. And that's the real pattern behind all 15 of these habits. None of them were extreme. None of them required equipment, discipline, or even awareness that something important was happening. They were the texture of an ordinary day in an ordinary American household. The walking, the reaching, the carrying, the cooking, the sleeping. Ordinary movements done consistently across a lifetime, adding up to something that no single workout or supplement could match. Modern life has replaced nearly all of them with convenience, and our joints are paying the price for it. The question isn't whether these habits worked. The question is whether any of them could fit back into a life that's been engineered around sitting still. If this gave you something to think about, the video appearing next covers another set of forgotten habits from the same era that modern science is only now catching up to. Worth a look.